Hey everybody, welcome to AI at Work. This is my hero's guide to responsible AI adoption. My name's Gary Walker. I'm a future of work architect, 22 North. So today, before I begin, I kind of just want to share a little bit about what I see in the work that I do. Um, I see a lot of organizations drowning in digital tools. They're losing millions of hours to inefficient knowledge retrieval. And now what's happening is you're adding AI on the mix of that. So you already have fragmented tools and fragmented systems, and then you're layering AI on top of it. So the result is not digital clarity, which is what we should be working towards. It just creates more digital chaos. Um, Now, there are some companies asking some really great questions in terms of how do we streamline our digital tools or ecosystem before we scale AI? How do we fix the information architecture so that when we do apply AI, it can enhance our work rather than masking the problems? And I kind of want to begin there. I want to begin saying that a lot of the conversations that are happening around AI at work right now, there is a question that tends not to get asked, and that is, what does it mean for humans to flourish alongside AI? Most AI conversations start with the tool, what the tool can do, the features that people are releasing. They're all feature focused. And you've probably seen this, but what we don't look at is like, how do we adopt AI that helps us as humans flourish and not just become more efficient or optimized? If you look at digital transformation, there's been so many different points in the last 50 years where like our work has been transformed. This is just the latest chapter in it. AI adoption is the next chapter. It's a very significant chapter. But what I've learned through organizations of all these different sizes is the key to success is not necessarily the technology you choose, it's how intentionally you design the relationship between the humans, the people that are using the technology, and also correct really intentional adoption pathways to scale those tools and support people. So today, what I want to do is really get into a lot of deep content, but I want to share some useful frameworks that I've tested and validated that help you move beyond that kind of coined phrase of AI first, which people seem to be like hyper focused on. And I'll just say right now, I'm not a big fan of AI first. It's very different to some of the stuff that's happened over the past few years when remote working became at the forefront due to COVID and people started to think about remote first. But that was very different in terms of the way that it was applied. AI first thinking is a little bit more dangerous. I think what's more powerful is human first AI adoption. Um, because the organizations that I think will thrive in this space aren't the ones that move the quickest and apply AI the quickest. It's the ones that move more thoughtfully and also build on solid digital foundations. So I really want to get into the weeds of that today. A little bit before we delve into that, a little bit about myself. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I typically help organizations move from that place of digital chaos to digital clarity. So what that means is I spend my days helping companies navigate the complex landscape of modern work. So whether that's streamlining the core collaboration tools, whether it's fixing information bottlenecks, or implementing AI thoughtfully and scaling AI tools. And it's really to get to a point where digital transformation works. I like to work with organizations where I'm actually part of the business, so I can really feel the cultural challenges. I can see the way that maybe digital tools have been deployed and the adoption pathway for that, the success, the sort of challenges, the opportunities as well, and really help them scale that and drive the adoption to be a lot more meaningful, a lot more intentional, and a lot more successful off the back of that. So it returns on the investment, because at the moment, a lot of companies want to be seen to be using AI. So it reminds me a little bit of people who are of my kind of age. You'll probably remember big data. And there was a period of time where everyone spoke about big data and how it's going to change everything. And lots of companies were talking about big data and we need to use big data. Not a lot of people really understood it or really understood how to apply it. They just wanted to be seen to be using big data or talking about it. It kind of feels like that with AI at the moment. A lot of organizations want to be seen to be doing something with AI rather than thoughtfully thinking about how they're going to adopt it and scale it, and also rethink the way they work, not just necessarily map the way they work to AI. So we're going to get into that as well. Now, I've got a playful kind of theme that runs through this slide content, and that's Batman. The reason why I've chosen Batman, I'll come on to later. He's always my favorite superhero. So from personal perspective, I'm going to choose Batman. But also he's a superhero without any superpowers. And I think that's really important if you look at us as humans and if you look at AI. There is a caveat there. He had endless amounts of money, but then you can kind of tie that to organizations with money to throw at problems as well. But the reason why I've chosen Batman is he had lots of gadgets, lots of technology, but he also knew how to use it effectively. And he also knew that he had to train himself, he had to condition himself, he had to still be creative in his thinking. So I'm going to apply this to this deck. It might work, it might not work. I'm hoping it does resonate with you. But like any great Batman book or story or film, I'm going to start with a villain, and the villain is the Riddler. And I kind of like sat about thinking about a kind of riddle that most organizations face daily. And that's really around information in my view. So bear with me, like, because I wrote quite a cheesy kind of riddle where I'm going to read that out and then we'll come into what I call the information crisis. So the riddle that I kind of created was I'm stored, I'm shared, I'm lost in the mix. You search, you scroll, you play data tricks. I'm there when you don't need me, and I'm gone when you do. What am I? So that is a riddle. Now, the answer is information you can't find when you need it most. And the reason why I kind of wrote that was it's kind of like something that should resonate with everybody that's listening to this or watching this. Like, how often do you go to find a bit of information or try and retrieve information to do your job, and you either can't remember what it is, or you have to interrupt someone to find that bit of information, or you spend time searching and the search fails, and it's just a compounding effect, and it's causing what I call the information crisis. So I'm going to share a lot more about that just now on this slide here. So really what I want to delve into is how much is inefficient knowledge retrieval truly costing your organization? And I'm going to lean into two sources, and I just want to recognize those sources. One is Slite. Slite is an information knowledge management tool, which also has a product called Super, which is an AI product. And also Atlatison. So both did studies this year, 2025, in depth, looking at information retrieval. So I want to use one of their calculations that assumes a kind of true cost. So what you're seeing on the screen just now is basically broken down in numbers and broken down to the impact. So I touched on the impact. So 81% of us resort to either pinging someone or setting up a meeting or interrupting someone. So if you work in a distributed organization with different time zones, that can really cause productivity delays as well, but also interrupts other people when they're trying to do their work. So what you see from this study is productivity drops when employees can't find what they need. You also create information bottlenecks. And also, you don't really have a single source of truth. You get information which is fragmented and scattered. So if we talk about applying AI to that, how do you really know that AI is going to find the information you need and you can trust that information? Yes, it might find it really quickly, but is it going to be the information that you require? And then if you break that down to the impact on the companies, the most galling one is that 33 days per employee is lost to searching each year. So of course, 9 times out of 10, a search fails on first attempt, according to these results. But if you think of every person in your company is losing 33 days a year just trying to find information they need to do their job. And then when you apply that with a clever calculation, like the reports do, so they look at an average annual salary, they look at fully loaded cost, working days per year, they take that daily search time as per the report. So if you look at 30 minutes daily search time, an 8-hour working day, and then the factors around failure rate, you can start to then like monetize that loss. So if you look on the right hand side of the slides here, that is the annual cost that companies are losing per 100 employees, 500 and 1,000. So if we focus on a 1,000 employee company, you're losing $6.6 million a year just because people can't find the information they need. That is just one problem that you can solve, and we'll come on to how you can solve that. But then if you apply that to Fortune 500 companies, it's exponential in terms of the amount of money that you're losing. Now, this is a kind of cruel irony of this story, and I touched on it there. So what's happening is companies are like deploying AI. So if you're in Microsoft, you might be deploying Copilot. If you're in Google Workspace or Slack, you're deploying their products like Gemini or Slack AI. But the irony of this is if you're not fixing the core information problem, like the information architecture and maintaining that, you're simply getting AI to search through disorganized information. So what that does is it creates an illusion of efficiency, whilst people actually then also developed a tendency not to trust the results. So you're not solving the information crisis, you're digitizing it. Your people are losing 33 days a year trying to find the information they need. Imagine just giving even some of that back for the time that matters. So the reason why this problem compounds is the AI systems become more capable, but if we can't solve these basic human AI collaborations now, how are we going to manage AI when it can handle far more complex reasoning? So there's a real opportunity just now for companies to solve the knowledge retrieval while preserving, I suppose, human agency while the stakes are relatively low. So what I mean by that is solving the trust problem. So if you look at the moment, every organization in the world can resonate with this. The information is fragmented. People don't typically have a single source of truth. There are some organizations that do this really well, but they're very intentional about it. So they look at where are our SOPs, where are our playbooks for our ways of working, where are our policies, our news, our guidance, our tools and systems. How do we consolidate them into, it doesn't necessarily now need to be one place. One place helps, but as long as you have the right structure to that, and then also the right people that maintain it, and also a framework that ensures that that information is kept up to date. Slight, a product that I use, has a fabulous feature where you can validate the information. So the content owners can go in and they can mark how long that information is valid for, whether it's a month or 6 months or a year. People can also flag it as outdated, which then triggers an alert to the content owner to review that. But also you can verify information. So when you then apply AI on top of that, it doesn't only look at whether information is outdated or not, it also looks for the verification of it. So that creates a trust. And then if you put AI on top of that, you're just getting amazing results where the information is found so quickly, but people automatically can trust that information. So yes, you need to put up the upfront work of building that foundation, but it's so worth it because the gains that you get, the people aren't then losing 33 days a year trying to find that information. So you're solving it by having structured, verified knowledge, and you're streamlining your tool ecosystem at the same time, which gives people much more autonomy as well. So it's a really great opportunity, and it's something that doesn't take a lot to solve for. It seems to get deprioritized by a lot of organizations, but if you just look at that application of it, it would work really well. Now, what I want to move on to is, I suppose, drawing a line right now. Where are we right now in terms of the reality check? So the reality check of AI, what I've used here is the Microsoft's Work Trend Index report, because it's really in-depth, but also reveals a lot of fascinating insights into the adoption of AI in the workplace. I've then laced that with my own insights with the companies I've worked with and the people that I've spoken to within my community that work in this space. So if you look at the moment right now, the current state is really fascinating, and then we can get into the psychology of the resistance. So the current state is that 75% of knowledge workers who sit behind a screen have already tried AI for work. A lot of people probably don't know quite sure where to start with it, and we'll come to that. But what's really fascinating to me are two of these points. 78% of AI users bring their own AI to work. So either their company have not switched on or approved AI technology within the company, or the company have maybe applied licenses for something like Copilot or Gemini or Slack or Asana, and they haven't given the right adoption pathway or training or contextual examples. What's fascinating from a psychological perspective is over half the people using these tools are reluctant to admit that they're using AI for those tasks. Now, the answers to that question are multifaceted because there's different psychologies at play. There's anxieties over job losses. So there's that fear of being replaced, and the media have driven that narrative massively in terms of job losses. rather than rethinking the way you work and looking at AI as a way to up level. People are scared of AI just taking their job. So what's really going to happen is here, if you are intentional, if you are creative, if you want to know the process to solve problems, you're still going to flourish massively here. If you're the type of person that your boss maybe says, hey, I want you to go and do X, Y, and Z, go and solve for it, and you get AI to do it, then potentially you're in trouble. But essentially, it's looking at how do you use AI to up level the work you're doing rather than actually do all the work for you. Because we'll come to what I call cognitive offloading later, and the crisis around critical thinking and creative thinking. But that's really important. So I think there's a tendency where people are reluctant to admit AI for that fear of being replaced. Difficulty is knowing how to navigate AI. AI is not perfect by any matter of means. If you put in the same prompt, it'll probably give you different answers multiple times. You have to prompt continuously. A great hack is actually using AI to improve your prompts. Like, you still want to direct the narrative and direct the direction of it. You don't want AI to do that for you, but you can also use AI to almost like make your prompts a little bit more tailored and concise. So you could do that. But also, if you look at what's not happening in companies, there's a missing frameworks for responsible and intentional use. There's no real training or adoption. A lot of people are just being left with, yeah, you've got Copilot, you've got Gemini, you've got Slack, go and figure it out. And then there's no sort of training on what I call cognitive fitness, and I'll come into that in a bit more detail as well. But I think it's important just to set where we are right now, and then come to some of the things around implementation reality, or what I call, so like adoption without strategy, which is what I'm seeing across nearly every organization right now. So companies are rapidly activating AI licenses, and it can be for the right reasons. A lot of the time it's to be seen to be using AI, but this is a high cost. It's not something that's cheap to deploy. So if they're talking on Copilot or Slack AI or Gemini, but the adoption rates are still remaining disappointingly low. So they're deploying tools without providing contextual examples, training, use case guidance, really understanding the outcomes that people are trying to work towards, and then mapping how AI can support them with that, and then later rethinking the way of working as well. So there's no real integration typically happening. They're essentially hoping that people will just figure it out themselves while juggling their existing workload. And there's some low-hanging fruit that companies don't need to invest a lot of energy in. But even if you look at people who are heavy users of something like Copilot or Gemini, just like leveraging some of the AI tools around transcriptions, recordings, meeting recaps, notes, actions, these types of things are super easy to deploy and sort of upskill, and they'd make a massive difference to people in terms of their time that they're spending on that. So streamlining those workflows, but also what's happening in companies is they're adding digital tools on top of the fragmented systems. So we always talk about, or I always talk about, digital clarity, but you're just creating more digital chaos because you're adding to this, you're adding more tools to it without any context. Also, recent research from MIT shows that AI usage is now a bigger predictor of critical thinking ability than educational levels. So these models learn to tell us what we want to hear rather than what we need to hear. And studies show the longer kind of daily AI use correlates with increased kind of loneliness, decreased critical thinking, decreased creative thinking, which is something we need to really focus on. It's almost like that bubbles of one. It's like an echo chamber essentially for people that are being isolated with AI companions. And these AI companions, or things like Chat GPT and things like that, OpenAI have already said recently that they're going to start to remember your previous conversations, also known as they want to create stickiness to their platform so you don't leave it, because the more they remember the stuff that you like and the stuff that you do, the less inclined you are to leave. But also creates those echo chambers where AI companions always agree with you, rather than being used in a way where, hey, can you look at this piece of information that I've worked on to create counter arguments to it, look at it from a bias perspective, these different types of things. So that seems super fascinating to me. So that's the current state. I think the missing foundation is that adoption strategy. And then you've got the risks that I'm talking about at the moment. And the biggest risk, I think, is definitely creative and critical thinking impacts. Okay, so that's where we are on AI adoption. So let's talk about, I suppose, why getting it right really matters. So leading AI researchers are predicting well, there's two different names for it. They call it artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence. It's essentially AI that supersedes or at least matches our current cognitive abilities. So they're saying that it could arrive from any time as soon as 2026 up to maybe 2030, but it is coming because it's that race to the top. A lot of governments, a lot of organizations want to be the main controllers of this information. And if they stop and start to put a lot of heavy governance and a lot of responsible regulation around it, then other countries and other governments may not do that, and therefore they lose out. So it's this catch-22 situation. But the reason why the timeline is really important is like if 80%, well, we said what 78% of people were bringing their own AI tools to work. That's what we saw. So those patterns are already forming now, whether we guide them or not. So the choices we make about AI adoption today aren't just about the current productivity gains, they're also about setting the cultural and operational precedents that for much more powerful systems. So like early adopters like maybe yourself, and we're going to influence the industry standards. So we can either shape a responsible AI culture now, or we can inherit someone else's approach later. And I think that's really important. We have a true responsibility to shape that AI culture now, not just jump on the bandwagon and get so excited about all the features and the technology led approach, but actually try and step back a little bit and start to make sure that we are keeping humans at the center. We are focusing on humans flourishing. And where does AI up level that work so that we can move it forward far more responsibly? And that comes to the choice. So another villain I'm bringing in. So it's Two-Face. I've used Lego because I kind of like Lego and I geek out on that as well. But we've already established like the reality. So let's just take a kind of check there. Organizations are losing millions to inefficient knowledge retrieval. They're adding AI tools on top of the chaos. Here's the thing though, that's not inevitable. You have a choice, and we've spoken about that. Like doing it intentionally and doing it responsibly and thoughtfully versus just trying to be first and trying to be fast. So that's where you've got a choice to make. You can continue with the current approach of throwing AI at all the problems and hoping for the best. Or as people or as companies, we can step back and ask that different question. What does it mean for humans to flourish alongside these tools? So that choice, I think, is going to define the next decade of work. And I suppose, like any good Batman or any good origin story, it starts with a decision. Like, what, I'll be cheesy here, what kind of hero do you want to be? And that's what it comes down to. Now, I touched on earlier this idea of AI first, and a lot of people are getting hyper focused on that. My view on this is humans need to set the agenda, not technology. This is not about what the technology can do. And if you look at any problem, like if you step back, even if you look at things like jobs to be done methodology and different things like that, it should be about the problem that you're solving for. Like there's always going to be a solution for it, but don't start with the solution. Don't start with the technology. And that's really important. So some of you are probably been thinking and seeing this kind of term. I mentioned it before: remote first, or asynchronous first, or digital first. The modern workplace and all these kind of first strategies. And many of those made perfect sense. Remote first means designing processes that work for distributed teams. Async first means defaulting to asynchronous work to allow for distributed workers to do their best work and have fewer interruptions. Those frameworks put a constraint first to force like better design. Whereas if you think of AI first, it's fundamentally different. And in my opinion, it's frankly dangerous because it implies that human processes should conform to what AI does well. But here's a problem with that right now. AI excels at things like pattern recognition, data processing, optimization. If we organize work around AI first principles, we're just optimizing for what machines already do well: efficiency, speed, consistency. We accidentally design humans out of the equation by doing that. Whereas if you have human first AI adoption, so it still has AI, but you're leading from a human first, it flips that completely. Instead of asking, how can humans adapt to AI? We ask, how can AI enhance what we do and be uniquely valuable to what we do? So things like creativity, things like judgment, empathy, complex problem solving, ethical reasoning, these types of things. And I think that's really important. So let's try and move away from this kind of thought process of AI first. And yes, AI is part of human first. But how do we approach it with that mantra? So I think that's something I'm very passionate about, as you can tell. And I think it's really going to be important in terms of how we move forward. I heard it's a guy, one of the founders of Remote, Job. I saw on LinkedIn, it was ages ago, he kind of talked about AI, like good work is good work. And I think he absolutely has validation in terms of saying that. Like at the end of the day, whether it's AI, whether it's a system, whether it's a person, the people at the end of it, they just want good work. So that sounds very empowering. I kind of want to extend and go a little bit deeper on this. Like for me, like good work is good work, absolutely, but it kind of glosses over the essential nuance. And the nuance that I'm going to go into here is, can the person using AI explain how the good work happened? So this kind of connects back to that insight of 52% of people are reluctant to admit using AI. Why? Because their fear is being questioned on the process or being questioned on the depth of understanding. Another friend of mine, James, at Illuminate Learning, who's super great guy. He also talks about this idea of like, if you're just getting AI to do the work and no one's ever validating or checking it, you're creating this debt further down the line where it's getting passed through and people are using AI to analyze that work rather than themselves, and maybe using AI to complement that. So I've kind of thought of like an analogy of, think of children when they are studying for exams. So yes, the school system is antiquated. We could probably do hours on education, which I'd also love, by the way. But most children, not all, but most children study for exams by studying past papers, memorizing questions and answers, but typically they can't explain the concepts. So the success is almost hollow in a way. And I kind of feel like AI is very similar. Like the output might look great, but if you as a human can't explain how it was generated or how or why it works, I suppose you're not really in control of that work. So you're still responsible for the work, not the tool. I suppose, how am I trying to say this? Like, you're still responsible for that work, but you're just relying on AI to generate that work. You're not actually directing it and getting into the weeds of it, where it's still your piece of work. You can still understand how it was generated. And I think that's really important, just to get into. So what I'm going to come to next, and bear with me here, like, so I've got a twist. So I did mention Batman at the start of my talk, and I did mention Batman as a superhero without superpowers. Although, as I said, a friend, Alvaro, rightly pointed out to me that Batman has one superpower: endless financial resources, which is true. But that's actually the perfect analogy that I touched on earlier, isn't it? Like, large organizations are spending vast amounts of money on digital tools, on AI licenses, just like Batman can spend all his money on technology and gadgets. But the critical difference right now is Batman doesn't just throw money at technology and gadgets and hope for the best. Batman knows exactly how and when to use each piece of technology or each gadget or each tool. And more importantly, Batman understands that the tool is not the goal. People that have maybe listened to some of the stuff I've done in the past around future ways of working and digital employee experience and things like that, I've always been big on the tool is not the goal. So for Batman, protecting Gotham is the goal. The technology just serves his mission, not the other way around. He's not starting with the technology and thinking, how can I use this technology to solve a problem? He's starting with, I need to protect Gotham. How do I use tools, technology, gadgets? So the human, or the Batman, remains a hero. The AI is almost like his Robin. It's almost like his sidekick. So like the gadgets, the technology is his sidekick. So for us, the human remains a hero, but why don't we approach our AI as our sidekick? Okay, so I think I've got like a quote from Batman here and a clip from Batman. So like, if you don't like Batman, that's cool. But this was from the movie The Dark Knight in 2008, Christopher Nolan's movie. which was phenomenal. But there was this piece where they were using advanced technology to listen and surveil all the humans in Gotham, which was unethical. But it's kind of like, I like the way it ties to this because we're so excited about what AI can do. We're not asking, I suppose, whether we should do it or how we should do it responsibly. So it kind of talks to that, like, it's beautiful, it's unethical, it's dangerous.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Unethical. Dangerous.
And that's what's really important here. So I think this isn't about anti-technology, it's about ensuring that AI makes us more efficient and also makes us more human. On the screen just now, I've Camille Carlton from the Centre for Humane Technology, who, like, I've been a part of the Centre for Humane Technology community for 9 years, 2016. And a lot of you will probably remember them from the Social Dilemma, but they're very heavy on AI dilemma at the moment. But she put it perfectly. We want technology that helps us live our lives with dignity and joy, not just productivity and optimization. So that difference really matters, because one approach treats humans as a hero of our own story. The other approach, which we're seeing a lot at the moment, treats humans as inefficiencies to be optimized, like commodities essentially. So what we're going to explore now is, like, what does human first AI adoption actually look like? Because the future isn't about building AI systems, it's about building systems that help us flourish. And that's what we're going to get into now. Okay, so throughout this presentation, what I've kind of shown you, I suppose, so far is, like, how do you scale AI effectively? And we're going to get into that now. Why we're doing it thoughtfully matters as well. So, like, there's two elements to AI. So, like, you've got the promise and the reality check. So again, it comes back to what we spoke about at the start of this section, the choices that we have. So it's not inevitable. The promise is clear, like, we've got massive efficiency gains, breakthrough innovation potential. The reality check is, what does that mean environmentally? Like, is it sustainable? What are the impacts on humanity, like on jobs, on social transformation without this wisdom? All of these different things, and we're going to get into that as well. So Batman, we spoke about, every hero needs the right tools. So the future is not about replacing humans with machines. It's just trying to create that symbiotic relationship where AI enhances and supports human capabilities. So if we just, as we go through all this, always keep the human as a hero and always approach AI strategically, but also think about the ethics around that. Okay, so let's get into the framework. So this is where we get into the real weeds and the nitty-gritty of, like, what's been happening in organizations. We've talked and set the scene in terms of where we are with AI, the philosophy of it, the human first versus the AI first approaches, the clip where we understand that every hero needs the right tools, but we need to get practical with it. So how do we actually implement this? How do we move from good intentions to real transformation? So this next section is hyper-focused on the frameworks, the tools that allow you to assess, and step-by-step processes to scale AI. So almost think about it as like a strategic framework or playbook. Because I suppose even Batman needs a plan when he's approaching to things. Okay, so what kind of, this isn't new, it's just been adapted. So I've always worked with kind of like adoption maturity curves, and you'll be familiar with these. A lot of technology companies use these types of things, Slack, Microsoft, these types of stuff. But it has been adapted, and the way I've adapted it is to look at multiple different elements. So there's this kind of new phase. So if we look at how you scale AI within your organization, what's different about it is, people always used to talk about early adopters, but there's this kind of media-driven, hyper-focused exploration phase. It's almost pre-adoption is what I've called it, where we know that people are experimenting. We know that people are, like, curious about it. They're bringing their own AI to work. So they are kind of discovering it, maybe playing with it, having a little try, and that feeds into the formal adoption process. So if we look at step one, which is the foundation, so people learn the AI basics and get comfortable. So that's essentially, people stop being afraid of AI and they just actually start to learn how to use it. And that's really going to be important, just getting that consistency, familiarity with it. Maybe it's picking one or two or three things that they can get comfortable with it. And then moving to that integration. So that's where teams start to save time, whether that's using AI individually or using it as a team together. And then the next two scales, orchestration is what I've called it, or orchestration. Again, kind of a bit geeky, but it's essentially where AI starts to do a lot of the mundane, boring stuff that humans can do, but it allows humans to get elevated to do far more creative things, problem-solving things. And then innovation. So this is where you go beyond mapping what you're doing at the moment and you start to rethink things. So this is where you can start to do things that were impossible before AI. So each stage answers, what does success look like? So if you think of foundation, you're really wanting your company to get comfortable, get competent. Then stage 2, you want those productivity gains. Stage 3 is where you start to free people from the drudgery. And then stage 4 is where the new possibilities are unlocked. And I'm not a big fan of personas. I recognize the value of them in terms of like getting people to connect. I'm more of a fan of like outcomes and like jobs to be done methodology, where you can actually focus on the problem and the outcome and then how that is solved. But I do see the importance of that. So the traditional view is that everybody kind of moves through things at the same pace, that we've got better technology, therefore it should be easier to adopt, and that resistance goes away over time. These types of things, we're reaching an AI first culture. But the reality is, the way people experience that is people are exploring AI individually before work even adopts it. I think there's a lot of emotion, a lot of concerns driving decisions. I think the job security fears are very real. They need addressing, and many people need clear guidance and need to feel confident. So success is going to be like people using AI thoughtfully and safely and considerably as well. And then I suppose to understand the importance of the assessment here is there's practical questions to ask. And notice that none of these questions are technical about AI capability. These are all human-based questions about the readiness, the comfort, the current challenges. So for measurement, what I've looked at is like individual, team, and organizational wide questions that you can ask. Now, to do this type of stuff, it might look like a lot of questions, but it would take like 5 minutes. You could use a Google form or a Microsoft form, even informal coffee conversations. For teams, you could even just jump into their meetings and try a simple workshop exercise. Give everyone like a colored dot where they place themselves in terms of a spectrum for each of the questions. And for organizational, you could even just drop it into some pulse surveys or focus groups as well. I think the 3 questions, or just start with 3 or 4 questions from each category. You're not looking for perfect assessment here. It's just an honest understanding of where people are. And once you've got those answers, you can start to map your findings to that previous maturity curve to identify the most appropriate starting point. So those types of questions, examples would be like, how comfortable am I with AI tools and putting that on a scale? Like, what are the daily tasks that consume most of my time? Team questions might be like I don't know, what information do we struggle to find quickly? Organizational wide, it might be like, I don't know, what's our tolerance for experimentation versus risk, or how are we measuring speed versus efficiency? These types of things. And then you've got, how do you go from the stages and the assessment to the action? So like, this is where I suppose you're mapping to the adoption curve, and then you're looking for, how do you get people comfortable with that? So if you've done the assessment and it looks like you're at the foundational stage, well, then you need to focus your adoption strategy on the individuals, like showing them like some of the low-hanging fruit that I spoke about, like writing better content, like creating and summarizing a lot of information, drafting documents, these different types of things, like using AI to like question the work that you're doing, to like look at areas where it could potentially be improved, like counter arguments to it if you're presenting, I don't know, like a sales pitch or something along those lines. And then you might map it to integration or organizational wide. And that's where it gets really interesting, especially organizational wide. We talked earlier about that massive information crisis. You can really solve for that. Like, you're connecting your systems, you're breaking down the silos, and then you've got trusted information retrieval as well. So that's really, like, when you start to map it, you'll then start to see where you need to start. And then also, like, where you're assessing yourself, your team, again, it's just assessing where you are, understanding that mix and meeting people where they are. Like, you've got to understand that everyone is at a different stage. So you need to try and cater for that as much as you can. Okay, so when it came to, and I want to go back to COVID and remote working, where people were kind of forced to work from home rather than like true remote working. So um, what I witnessed during that period, during that COVID era, is directly relevant to this AI adoption conversation, which is why I'm talking about it. So when organizations were suddenly forced to go remote, most of them made a crucial, like, it was a crucial, but it was an understandable mistake. They simply tried to map how they worked in their office to virtual environments. So office meetings, put it on Zoom, desk-based collaboration, move it to Slack. And that doesn't work because remote work isn't like office work in that sense with different tools. It's fundamentally a different way of working. And because COVID was a crisis response rather than a thoughtful transition, most organizations never got to experience what true effective remote experience should be like. They just experienced a digital office culture which felt, let's be frank, exhausting and very ineffective. And that's what's fascinating about AI adoption. Like, what I'm seeing is the exact same pattern, but with a twist. So organizations are trying to map their current processes directly to AI tools. Okay, so we write emails, let's get AI to write the emails faster. We create reports, let's get AI to do the reports. And unlike remote work, that mapping approach can actually be a really great starting point with AI. And the reason why is AI mapping gives people immediate tangible benefits. They start to already see the time savings, they get comfortable with the tools, and they overcome that initial fear barrier. But, and this is crucial, like, mapping is the entry point, it's not the destination. So the real opportunity with AI, just like with remote work, is rethinking how the work gets done eventually. So the slide that you're seeing in front of you kind of serves that dual purpose. Firstly, it's a practical worksheet that you could use to start to help people identify where AI can immediately support their work. Those quick wins, building confidence and comfort. But secondly, it's designed to help them start shift their thinking. Like, how can AI do my current tasks faster? Like, how might AI, I don't know, like, enable entirely new ways of working? The goal is to get people comfortable enough with AI through mapping that they're ready to innovate and rethink their workflows. That's where the real transformation will happen, not just simply doing things faster, but discovering what's possible when humans can leverage AI to work for them and work on behalf of them and up level the work that they're doing. So on the screen, you'll see this idea of like a task inventory, an assessment, and then the mapping process. So even if you start, it doesn't need to be 5 or 7, but even if you start with 3 routine tasks that consume your time, mark those down. Then when you're assessing them, rate them. Rate them. I've just given some examples here, but you could rate them on time consumed, repetitiveness, value add, and then almost like give that a score. So, like, what are the prime AI opportunities? So how could that be simplified? What are the information bottlenecks? And then how does AI then help with that? So summarizing, drafting, analyzing, searching. These are just a good kind of starting point for people. And then also starting with AI conversations. So this comes back to the tools, not the goal. So the theory that many companies want to be seen to be using AI to be relevant without truly understanding what they're trying to achieve. So the tool is not the goal. So instead of just jumping straight into AI and activating it and the solutions, you need to follow a kind of different framework. So first you need to build the foundation. So we spoke about that trusted information architecture, streamlining the tools that you've got at the moment. You don't want to just layer AI on top of 6 project management tools that you already have, or multiple different platforms that are facilitating knowledge and things like that. So when you integrate AI, you want it to like enhance what's there, not just mask existing problems. And that's the problem, I suppose. Like, AI, you don't want to hope for the best. You just need that intentional ecosystem, and then you will really see it. You'll see it flourish completely. So what I've got on the screen here is, like, instead of should we use AI or AI will make us more efficient, just reframe those questions, like, how might this help us with this problem, or how could this task be handled so we can focus on the human skill? And that's the way to approach it. It's a framework of foundation, integration, and transformation. So trusted information, streamlined tools should be your starting point. Then AI enhances that, and then people get back the time for meaningful work. And that is far better than just applying AI and then hoping for the best. Now, before we delve into like the how, let's also look at like the scaling reality that most organizations fail, or sorry, not fail, face. So they go from personal AI experimentation straight to team chaos. So what that means is you end up with just tons of frustration. Successful companies tend to take a different path. They'll build the foundations first, so integrate things thoughtfully, and then they'll transform it sustainably. So the difference is starting with how people actually work rather than just rolling out features. And I think that's really important. So again, re-emphasizing that model. But then if we look at the individual, the team, and the organizational wide, you're already familiar with the things that those things can do, but then you're then applying the technology. Okay, so we've got the problem, we've got the how it can apply, we've done the foundational work. How do we then layer the tools on top of that? So if you're wanting to achieve something like cross-platform search with trusted information retrieval, breaking down those silos, something like Super as a tool solves for that problem only where you've done the foundation, and that's really critical. I'll always keep coming back to that, always when you've done the foundation. And Copilot can do that too. So if you've done the foundational work, whether you're using something like Microsoft Loop or you're using SharePoint still, like Copilot can basically go and mine that information, but it will only be effective if it's mining information that has had the verification, it's got content owners, it's been maintained, these different types of things. So that's really important as you start to approach the scaling AI. Okay, so that's kind of like the frameworks for responsible AI adoption and also the maturity stages, how you move through, like assess your team, the practical steps to move forward. I'm going to come into like implementation. Before I do, I kind of want to show you something that a lot of organizations just miss entirely. So what we've not been talking about is the cost of, I suppose, not using AI effectively. So I'm going to show you a picture of like what happens when you scale AI without consideration of the full picture. And this is part of the story that a lot of people just don't talk about because it opens a can of worms. It's pretty uncomfortable, but you really do need to see it. So basically, if we look at sustainability first, like so environmentally, and we look at the climate and these different things. So you remember the information crisis slide showing millions of hidden costs. So here's a picture of what happens when we scale without considering the full picture. Now, I just want to shout out Christoph at Slight, the founder there. He had posted on LinkedIn a while ago about Shopify, and he'd done a kind of quick and dirty calculation, which I really liked. So I'm using it here. So thanks to Christoph for that. So like, if you look at AI and you look at licenses being applied, the decision of Shopify, and we're not jumping on Shopify here, you're just an example for this, but they've basically applied licenses and mandated usage for 8,300 employees. Now, the calculation that Christoph was using, and again, it's a bit of on the back of a fag packet, for lack of a better phrase. But if you look at 100 queries a day and you look at very lightweight application of kilowatts of energy, like 0.003, which is probably significantly lower than what a query is, you then apply that daily and conservatively, you look at the impact of that. So where you've got 8,300 employees running maybe 100 AI queries a day, the impact of that is that's enough power to power 60 homes annually in America, or 50 cars driving for an entire year. Now you imagine if you start to apply that to Fortune 500 companies, like that's a mass calculation and load and energy costs. And if you look at like the data centers and the pressure on the data centers around this as well, there's a really significant tech company out there that their energy consumption is up over 30% in the past 12 months. And a lot of these organizations have got carbon neutral or carbon positive targets by 2030. And they're almost like having to offset this negative impact of AI by buying carbon tokens, and companies that are planting trees and these different types of things to kind of offset against that. So it's a real consideration. It's something to think about that I don't think a lot of people really do think about. One of the other things that this is probably one I'm super, super passionate about, is like that. I've kind of called it the cognitive offloading crisis. And it's funny, kind of when I was writing this a few months ago, I kind of come up with this concept. And obviously I've been like just chipping away at the content as I can and trying to put some more thought into it and think really intentionally about it. And I was listening to a podcast a few days ago where someone talked about the cognitive impact. So this really talks to that a lot. So this comes into like AI when you're not using it in the right way, like it comes at a cost of critical thinking. So there was a study, I think it was 600, over 660 people recently, where AI usage was the biggest predictor of critical thinking. So basically, across those users, the heavy users of AI were actually reducing their critical thinking and creative thinking significantly. There was like a significant cognitive offloading. So I've kind of tried to like tie this to navigation or the GPS analogy. So like mirroring GPS. So like people over time have lost the ability to navigate or navigation skills because we don't need to do it anymore. Google does it, or Apple does it, or all the other companies that do it. And it's the same with AI and critical thinking. If we continually use this every single day and we don't do it intentionally, then it's that cognitive fitness aspect as well. We are going to become people that don't think as creatively. We aren't going to be as critical thinking. And that is just, it's not a great outcome for anyone, really. So I suppose it's almost like a paradox, isn't it? Like the business impact right now is more efficient, short term, less innovation, but long term, you're going to like impact your innovation, your creativity. So the solution that I've come up to on the screen here, and I'll go into a bit more information, is like intentional use. So like, what does a framework look like? So before prompting, and I do think prompting is something that's going to go out. So this next couple of years, I think AI will just generate the prompts for you, or they'll promote the prompts. But if you look right now, like intentional use for me is pausing before you even prompt. And I kind of eat my own dog food. Like I've been using AI for 3.5 years quite significantly. And I've also tried to like apply these intentional frameworks, and I see a massive difference as I've navigated that journey. So I'm looking at like things like what am I thinking through? Like, should I explore this first? Like, how does AI enhance what I'm doing here and not replace it? What is keeping me sharp? So my thought is like, I suppose there's another thought here. Could designers of AI introduce questions or post scenarios that provoke humans using it to think rather than just providing the answers, almost like reverse prompting in a way? So what I put on the screen here is like the gains. So like the efficiency gains are like obvious in terms of like speed and higher volume and drafts, but the costs are like the cognitive offloading, the like efficiency gains, but the cognitive impact on that. Also, younger users, like the studies that I've been reading, like ages 17 plus, show really concerning patterns with high use of AI. So my kind of solution just now, and it's not perfect, but it's an intentional framework. So similar to things like meditation and all these different things in presence, like try to be present. So before you prompt or use AI or an agent, like what am I trying to think through here? Like, should I explore this myself? Coming back to that kind of exam analogy of when I've completed this piece of work and AI supported me in doing this, do I understand how I got to that process? And what guidelines are going to keep me sharp in that realm? So then I come to what I'm calling the cognitive fitness challenge. So I kind of would love organizations to deploy this type of thing where you're scaling AI, but you're focusing on the human impact. So yes, you've got that promise of 10x faster output, but you've got the reduced thinking, critical thinking. So just like I touched on earlier, GPS made us worse navigators, AI risks making us worse thinkers. Malcolm Gladwell, my friend Matt always used to talk about Malcolm Gladwell, and some of his stuff's great. Like, be good at the things that the machine is not. And I suppose to tie it back to our story about Batman doesn't stop training because he has the technology or the gadgets, so neither should you. So you need to try to apply these things. You need to try to apply your reasoning, apply presence, practice before prompting, ask yourself like alternate ways that you can do this independent work, because that's really going to be critical in this sort of pathway. And then we've got what's called the companion trap. So it's almost like where AI, you just become so dependent on AI, it's almost too helpful. And there's a predictable pattern which is kind of emerging here. So we start using AI for simple tasks, and I can absolutely speak from experience here and also witness it in other people as well. Then you begin to rely on it for maybe decisions or validation, perhaps, or maybe solving problems. But AI systems learn that being helpful means agreeing with us. So telling us sometimes what we want to hear, and there's lots of examples of this. And that then creates this kind of companion trap of emotional dependence. So it starts replacing humans as feedback loops. They're designed to be engaging, but not necessarily truthful, because they're only going off data. So the antidote here isn't to avoid AI, but to design our AI interactions so they enhance what we're doing rather than replace our relationships. Okay, so what I want to come back to here is like efficiency through subtraction, or the idea of that. So I spoke to you before that I see a lot of organizations treating AI as like an addition rather than an integration. And when you add those AI tools on top of existing digital chaos, people are drowning in that sprawl. So they're switching continuously. We've seen systems losing cognitive energy. And that's before they've even started a lot of their own work. So the answer definitely isn't more tools, it's efficiency through subtraction. And that's something I've done at length with organizations for well over a decade. It's fewer, better integrated core collaboration tools that people can trust. And then when you apply AI, it gives much more consistency and truthful answers to the information. So I think that's really important. So look at your core collaboration tools, look at your core collaboration stack. You're never going to get universal agreement on the tools that you go with, but the more you consolidate into one tool for each category, the more you're going to solve for the fragmentation that exists, and also the more success you're going to have with AI when you start to deploy it. So when I think of like a core collaboration stack, what you're seeing in front of you just now is like almost just an example. So it's an example of let's call it a Slack Google environment. This works as well for things like Microsoft 365. You would just substitute the tools. So where you've got Slack, you would have Microsoft Teams. Where you've maybe got Asana, you might have Microsoft Project or Planner. Where you've got knowledge management, it might be Microsoft Loop or SharePoint and things like that. So these can be like subbed in and swapped out. So what you're seeing on the screen is the core collaboration tools, enhancements, and alternatives. Alternatives might exist where there's maybe a mastery department that needs a specific tool. But bear in mind, this isn't focusing on departmental specialist tools. This is core collaboration tools. So what we're looking at here is like, if you look at the screen, you've got for communication Slack and Gmail, you've got Google Workspace, you've got Gemini, which comes in there. So having a category for AI productivity and search is definitely an emerging pattern. Task management might be something like Asana, knowledge management might be something like Slate, and then meetings, you would then apply that. But then you're looking at the enhancements. So if you think of all those different tools, you then need to start to give people the adoption strategies to scale things like Slack AI, Gemini AI, Asana AI, that all exists and coexists, but it can be used in different ways. And then you're trying to give people context to how they can use that in their daily work and their individual work. And then with the models that we showed earlier, how that then applies to team and then organizational wide. And that's essentially the goal that you're trying to get towards around this. Okay, so the other aspect as well is like an ethics check. So this comes back to before we, I suppose, scale AI across the organization. Remember that kind of 78% of people are bringing their own AI to work. So people are already choosing these tools without any frameworks, which will really scare a lot of cybersecurity and CIOs and whatnot out there. So this checklist almost like prevents those problems before they start. So asking these 5 questions, like the first one is like, can we explain how we make decisions? So this isn't about understanding algorithms. It's just about, if the tool recommends approving a loan, can you explain to the person like why? If you can't, then that's a red flag. Like, and these questions are built within that. So it could be things like, does this enhance or replace human judgment? So, okay, AI tools can make you appear smarter, and it can appear a lot of people to smarter, but it can also make you a lot lazier. So like, does it help me make better decisions, or does it make decisions for me? And then it's elevating the people who can be creative and can be intentional. So this is like a simple ethics check that you can start to go through. Okay, so we've seen the challenges, especially around cognitive offloading, the companion trap, that environmental impact that we spoke about, like when you're scaling without any strategy. So And don't get me wrong, like it's overwhelming and it's a lot of complexity, but here's why I like this moment in technology. Like, I suppose this is what I love about this moment in technology history. We have time to get it right, not a lot of time, but solutions do exist. Like frameworks exist, and organizations that implement them thoughtfully will have a competitive advantage. So let's talk about how we build the future of work we want, one where AI enhances human capability rather than replacing it. That idea of AI as a sidekick and humans remain as a hero. So we are still the architects of the change. So just as we have guidelines for professional relationships with colleagues, we need to sort of establish healthy boundaries with AI. So at a team level, we want AI to enhance human collaboration, not replace it. Important decisions should involve human discussion, not just AI consultation. Um, Almost like AI free sessions, I think are really powerful as well to just maintain that creative muscle memory. We talked about Batman having all the tools and the gadgets, but still trains his body and his mind. So at an individual level, it's about maintaining that cognitive fitness. Um, so looking at those daily practices. So as an individual, like starting with a task without AI or explaining your work process where you've used AI, reviewing what you've learned and what AI has like hint taught you is really important. And then how does that apply in reality? So if you keep your thinking sharp, these are the four rhythms that you should be looking at. So like start one task without AI, like I was saying, and that basically means like before you even reach for AI, just try and solve the problem for yourself. Like you're not trying to be faster, you're just trying to activate the muscles. Like and then trying to have that reflection time. So like what did you figure out on your own? What did AI teach you? Like are you learning or just consuming? And I think that's really important. And then the explanation test. So monthly, can you explain your work process to someone else? Like are you too dependent on AI? Like because teaching others will keep you sharp as well. And then that quarterly view of like, are your capabilities decreasing? Are they getting stronger? Like adjusting the AI use accordingly. So again, just emphasizing this isn't anti-AI, it's pro-human. So like just keep that in mind. That idea of Batman doesn't stop training because he has the tools and gadgets. So neither should you. And then we're looking at like the scaling responsibly, and I think that's important as well. So like at an individual level, it's the idea of like personal guidelines. So this is where it starts. Every person needs their own intentional framework. The questions that we touched on earlier, the cognitive fitness, practicing for prompting. At team level, I think shared agreements are good. What tools, what purposes, what oversight, regular check-ins. Are we maintaining quality while we're gaining speed? Really, really important question. And then organizational wide. So like, yes, leadership sets the tone, but don't just use AI to be 10 times faster. Use it to be 10 times smarter. So like measure the confidence of the employee, the decision quality, the innovation attempts, because it's really hard to get AI to do something to the goal that you want. Like you have to multi-prompt it. It's not that smart at times. And there's almost like a fourth dimension to this as well, which is a cultural level. So I don't think a lot of people talk about that, but this means ensuring that AI adoption aligns with your stated values. So considering environmental impact as you scale the usage. So measuring the quality of the human relationships alongside the productivity measures. So research, I can't even say that word, research shows there's a risk of gradual disempowerment. So we slowly give up the human agency without even realizing it. And that connects to leadership. So when we talk about this isn't just about implementing tools, as Malcolm Gladwell said, be good at the things the machine is not. Responsible scaling ensures that your people are good at thinking. They're still good at deciding and innovating. The AI then starts to handle the routine work. And then there's the application of going beyond the vanity metrics to true insights. So typically, people will just measure tasks completed, time saved, efficiency gains. But what you should also be looking at is new metrics. So beyond those traditional productivity ones, like what is a human relationship? Are people connecting better with their colleagues? Are they becoming more isolated? Like, what is the emotional dependence on AI? Like, do people feel more anxious when using AI, when not using AI? Like, these things are really important about scaling it responsibly. So, if your only metrics are like speed and cost, you're probably optimizing for the wrong things. you'll be creating a workforce that is faster, but it's less capable of independent thinking. Like the right column that I've kind of introduced here is like giving you that employee competence. It's measuring those types of things. So I think that's really important. You'll remember that you're not just implementing AI, you're also modeling responsibility across the organization, culturally as well. And as we come to the end, like this comes back to that leadership choice. So as someone who helps implement these tools, who helps like the core collaboration stack, the ways of working, like scaling and adopting AI, like I also want to ensure that you understand the broader implications. And that's why I really wanted to touch on the sustainability impacts, the cognitive impacts, the human side of things. So essentially, you've got three choices. You either do nothing and watch your competitors pull ahead. You scale AI faster and then you just deal with the dependencies later. Or three, you build the foundations right and you compound your advantage. And from my perspective, the organizations choosing three will own their industries. So the question is, which one do you want to be? And then answer that. So I kind of want to end where we began. So that's that choice of like two futures. So I touched on the Center for Humane Technology and Camille's quote of what does it mean to create technology that helps humans flourish? And really think about that. What does it mean to create technology that helps humans flourish? The answer isn't just in the AI tools we choose, but what I've tried to demonstrate today is like it's how we choose to design a relationship between humans and AI. So every framework that I've discussed today serves one purpose. It's ensuring that AI makes us more efficient, but it also helps us remain human. So the choice, it's not about implementation, it's whether your organization wants to become a place where humans flourish with dignity or whether humans become optimized components in an efficient machine. So the future of work, in my opinion, shouldn't be written by algorithms. It should be written by leaders who choose to put humans first, like human flourishing over mere efficiency. And that's really what I want to finish on. Your origin story starts today, and I really hope it starts as a human first organization. So I just want to thank everyone who maybe stayed for the duration of this. It was a heavy, heavy content. There's a lot to get through. As I mentioned at the start, like I'm so passionate about helping organizations build sustainable human-centered approaches to not just technology, it's ways of working, but also AI adoption. So I've done this with a lot of organizations, and I'm passionate to work with new clients and new industries, and not just consult and advise. Like I really like to get in the weeds of it in terms of culturally, really understand the challenges in the organizations and the opportunities as well. So I'd love to continue this conversation. If anyone's really fascinated by any parts of it, if you're ready to kind of move beyond the AI hype to maybe a thoughtful implementation, or you want to discuss some of the topics that I've touched upon, just please reach out to me on LinkedIn or through Instagram or social feeds, and we can have a chat, and that'd be great. Thanks a lot for your time.